An abandoned dog saw its owners bringing another dog home. Lightning sliced through the darkness as Emily Matthews rushed across the Austin Animal Shelter's parking lot, her rain-soaked jacket offering little protection against the relentless Texas storm. The urgent call from her colleague David at 2 a.m. had pulled her from restless sleep. "Emily, you need to come. Now. There's something about this dog." The shelter's fluorescent lights flickered as she pushed through the heavy doors, water dripping from her auburn hair. The usual night silence was broken by a sound she'd never heard in her 15 years of shelter work, a deep, mournful howl that seemed to carry the weight of untold stories. "Back here," David called from the isolation wing, his voice tight with concern. As Emily approached, she saw him standing before a kennel, his weathered face illuminated by emergency lights. Inside, a German Shepherd mix sat with unusual stillness, her amber eyes reflecting an almost human-like awareness. "Found her in the Henderson's yard," David explained, passing Emily a soggy intake form. "But that's not the strange part. Watch this." He reached for a worn blue rope toy from a nearby bin, one that had belonged to the Hendersons' recently deceased dog. The moment the toy came into view, the shepherd's entire demeanor changed. She didn't lunge or bark like most dogs would. Instead, she pressed her nose against the chain-link fence, releasing a soft whimper that made Emily's heart constrict. "She did this with every toy we showed her," David said quietly. "It's like she's looking for something. Or someone." Emily knelt before the kennel, meeting those intelligent eyes. The dog moved closer, and in that moment, something passed between them, a connection that transcended words. On the dog's intake form, someone had hastily scribbled the name Zuyu. Thunder crashed outside, but Zuyu didn't flinch. Instead, she maintained that steady gaze, as if trying to convey a message that Emily couldn't quite grasp. In her years of rescue work, Emily had seen countless animals carry the burdens of their past, but something about this one was different. "There's more to your story, isn't there, girl?" Emily whispered, carefully extending her hand. As Zu's wet nose touched her fingers, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that this midnight encounter was about to set in motion events that would change not just her life, but countless others in ways she couldn't yet imagine. The morning sun crept through the shelter windows as Emily sat at her desk, staring at the photo that had guided her life's purpose for the past decade. In it, a young girl with pigtails and a bright smile, her sister Sarah, hugged their childhood dog, Max. The image was taken just 3 days before the accident that had torn her family apart. Emily traced her finger over Sarah's face, remembering that fatal winter morning. Sarah, only 12 at the time, had been walking Max when a drunk driver lost control on the icy road. Max, sensing the danger, had pushed Sarah partially out of the way, taking the brunt of the impact. Both Sarah and Max were lost that day, but their final act of love and sacrifice had set Emily on an unshakable path. The tragedy had nearly destroyed their family. Their mother retreated into a shell of depression, their father buried himself in work, and 15-year-old Emily found herself drowning in survivor's guilt. It was during those darkest days that she first volunteered at the local animal shelter, seeking some connection to what she'd lost. "You've got your sister's eyes, Mrs. Henderson," the elderly shelter manager had told her on that first day. The kind that sees right into an animal's soul. Those words had been the first thing to pierce Emily's grief, giving her a glimmer of purpose. Over the years, that purpose had grown into an unwavering dedication. Emily worked her way through college, earning degrees in animal behavior and social work, always returning to the shelter between classes and on weekends. Each scared, abandoned, or injured animal that found their forever home helped heal a small piece of her broken heart. Now, at 32, Emily had become the shelter's lead behavioral specialist, known throughout Austin for her ability to connect with the most traumatized cases. Her colleagues often joked that she had a sixth sense about matching pets with families, but Emily knew it wasn't mystical. It was simply that she understood, deep in her bones, how love could heal even the deepest wounds. The previous night's encounter with Zuyu had stirred something in Emily, reminding her of the way Max used to look at Sarah, that same depth of understanding, that same soul-deep connection. As she prepared for her morning rounds, Emily's hand brushed against the small silver locket she always wore, containing a tiny photo of Sarah and Max. "You're still guiding me, aren't you?" she whispered. The shelter's morning chaos was beginning to build, volunteers arriving, dogs barking their greeting, cats demanding their breakfast. but Emily's mind kept returning to Zoo's kennel, to those knowing amber eyes and that mournful whimper. In her gut, she felt that familiar stirring, the one that had led her to her most successful rehabilitations and adoptions. A knock on her office door interrupted her thoughts. David stood there, coffee in hand, his face etched with concern. "You look like you haven't slept," he said, placing the cup on her desk. "That new dog Zoo, she got under your skin, didn't she?" Emily nodded, running her fingers through her hair. "There's something about her, David. Something that reminds me of." She trailed off, glancing at Sarah's photo. "Of Max," David asked softly. He was one of the few who knew her full story, who understood the weight she carried. "Yes," Emily replied, standing up. "And I think, just maybe, she's here for a reason. The same way I was meant to be here." She grabbed her clipboard, ready to start her assessments. "We just have to figure out what that reason is." The Winters' once pristine colonial house on Maple Street now showed signs of neglect, paint peeling, garden overgrown, and a for sale sign that seemed to mock their dreams of stability. Inside, Thomas Winters sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by medical bills and past due notices, his head in his hands, while his wife Catherine tried to comfort their daughter Sophie. "I want Rex back," Sophie whispered, clutching the elderly German shepherd's worn collar. At just 11 years old, she had endured more loss than most adults. The previous year's accident had changed everything. Sophie had been crossing the street after school when a texting driver swerved onto the sidewalk. Rex, their beloved family guardian for 12 years, had lunged forward, pushing Sophie clear of the car's path. The impact had been devastating. "Baby, Rex saved your life," Catherine soothed, running her fingers through Sophie's blonde hair. What she didn't say was how the mounting veterinary bills from trying to save Rex had drained their savings, maxed out their credit cards, and forced Thomas to take a second job. They'd spent everything they had, but in the end, Rex had slipped away in Sophie's arms at the clinic. The financial aftermath had been severe. Thomas's contractor business had already been struggling due to the economic downturn, and the medical expenses had been the final blow. Now they faced foreclosure on their home of 15 years. The apartment they'd found would barely fit their belongings, and worse, it had a strict no pets policy. Which brought them to their current heartbreak, Zoo, their second German shepherd, who had been Rex's companion for the past 3 years. The younger dog had been a bright spot in their lives, especially close to Sophie, but since Rex's passing, Zoo had become increasingly distressed, constantly searching for her old friend. "She keeps looking for him," Sophie said, tears streaming down her face. Yesterday she went to all their favorite spots in the park. She waited by his bed for hours. The girl's voice cracked. "How can we leave her too?" Thomas stood up, his shoulders heavy with the weight of impossible choices. Through the window he could see Zoo in the backyard, sitting in Rex's favorite spot under the oak tree. The dog's dignified presence reminded him painfully of Rex, of all they'd lost, of all they were about to lose. "We have to think about what's best for Zoo," Catherine tried to explain, though her own heart was breaking. "We can barely afford food right now, sweetheart. The apartment won't allow her, and she paused, fighting back tears. "We need to give her a chance at a better life." Sophie ran from the room, her sobs echoing through the house. Upstairs they could hear her door slam, followed by the muffled sound of her crying into Rex's old blanket. Thomas moved to go after her, but Catherine caught his arm. "Give her time," she whispered. "She's lost so much already." In the backyard, Zoo lifted her head, her ears perked toward Sophie's window. The dog's plaintive whine carried through the evening air, a sound that seemed to embody all their grief and guilt. They had promised her forever, just as they had promised Rex. Now, like everything else in their lives, that promise was crumbling. None of them could have imagined that Zoo's arrival at the shelter that stormy night would set in motion events that would challenge everything they thought they knew about love, loss, and the true meaning of family. Dr. Rachel Martinez stood in her veterinary office's supply room, staring at the framed photo on the wall. Luna, her first therapy dog, helping a young patient overcome their fear of medical procedures. The memory was bittersweet now. Luna's recent retirement due to age had left a void not just in their practice but in their home, especially for Isabella. Through the office window, Rachel could see her 12-year-old daughter sitting alone on a bench in the clinic's garden, her dark hair hiding her face as she wrote in her journal. Isabella hadn't spoken a word outside their home since Luna's retirement 3 months ago. The selective mutism, triggered by severe anxiety, had returned with a vengeance. The day Luna left for her retirement home in Houston had been devastating. The elderly therapy dog had been Isabella's voice, her bridge to the world since the trauma of losing her father in military service 5 years ago. Luna had helped Isabella find her voice, then now, that voice was lost again. Dr. Martinez, her assistant Jessica, appeared at the door. The Henderson case files you asked for about Rex. Rachel's hands trembled slightly as she took the folder. She'd reviewed these files countless times, searching for anything she might have missed, any way she could have saved the old German Shepherd. The night Rex was brought in had haunted her. Despite hours of surgery and every treatment available, she couldn't save him. The memory of Sophie Winter's heartbroken cries still echoed in her dreams. It was cases like these that made Rachel question her ability to continue in veterinary medicine. Mom Isabella's soft voice came from the doorway. She only spoke at home or in the clinic when they were alone. "Are you thinking about Rex again?" Rachel nodded, pulling her daughter close. Isabella understood her mother's pain. They'd both seen too many goodbyes in this clinic. The Martinez home, once filled with the joyful sounds of Luna's therapy sessions and Isabella's laughter, had grown quiet. The special room they'd set up for Luna's work with children now stood empty, toys and training equipment gathering dust. Rachel had considered selling the equipment, but something held her back. "I miss her," Isabella whispered against her mother's scrubs. "Luna always knew when I needed her." When the thoughts got too loud, she fingered the charm bracelet Luna had helped her earn, bead by bead, as she progressed in therapy, her tangible reminder of how far she'd come. Rachel kissed her daughter's head, remembering how Luna had transformed not just Isabella's life, but countless others. The therapy dog had an extraordinary gift for connecting with traumatized children, showing them a path back to trust and healing. Now, without Luna, Isabella was retreating into herself, and Rachel felt powerless to help. The evening news played quietly in their living room, barely masking the silence that had become their constant companion. A story about the local animal shelter caught Rachel's attention. They were featuring their adoption program. As she watched, her mind wandered to the empty bed in their garden room, to the quiet halls of their home, to her daughter's silent struggles. Maybe, she thought, watching Isabella curl up in Luna's favorite corner with her journal, it's time to open our hearts again. But the guilt over Rex, the fear of failing another animal, or worse, disappointing Isabella, held her back. She couldn't know that fate was about to intervene in the form of a special German Shepherd named Zoo, whose arrival would challenge everything they thought they knew about healing and second chances. The morning after Zoo's arrival, Emily arrived at the shelter to find an unexpected crowd gathering at the entrance. Leading them was Margaret Wilson, the influential head of the Oak Haven Neighborhood Association, clutching a stack of papers and wearing a determined expression that Emily had come to dread. "This has to stop," Miss Matthews, Margaret announced, her voice carrying across the parking lot. "We've documented 17 cases of adopted animals from your shelter causing problems in our community. The screening process is clearly inadequate." Behind her, a group of about 30 residents nodded in agreement, some holding signs protesting the shelter's irresponsible adoption policies. Emily took a deep breath, remembering the shelter's latest controversy. Last month, a previously adopted pit bull had broken free from its leash, causing panic in a local park. Though no one was hurt, the incident had sparked renewed criticism of the shelter's rehabilitation programs. "Mrs. Wilson," Emily began diplomatically, "our adoption process is one of the most thorough in Texas. Each animal undergoes extensive behavioral assessment." "Like the assessment you did on the Henderson's dog," Margaret interrupted, producing a newspaper clipping. "The one that cost them thousands in property damage before they had to return it." The mention of the Hendersons made Emily's chest tighten. The case had been particularly painful. A traumatized German Shepherd mix they'd placed with the family had struggled to adjust, eventually developing severe separation anxiety. The dog had been returned to the shelter, adding fuel to the community's growing concerns. David emerged from the shelter, positioning himself supportively beside Emily. "Perhaps we should take this discussion inside," he suggested, eyeing the growing crowd of onlookers. "No," Margaret declared. "This needs to be public. We're calling for an immediate review of all adoption applications. No more rehabilitated strays in our neighborhoods until proper protocols are in place." She thrust a petition toward Emily. over 300 signatures from concerned residents. Emily scanned the document, her heart sinking. Many of the names belonged to longtime shelter supporters. The community's trust, built over years of successful adoptions, was eroding. "You can't possibly understand the risks," a man from the crowd called out. "These animals need professional facilities, not experimental rehabilitation programs." The words stung. Emily thought of Sarah, of Max, of all the animals who'd helped heal her own trauma. "Every animal deserves a chance at a family," she said firmly, raising her voice to address the crowd. "Our success rate." "Success rate," Margaret scoffed. "Like the success you had with Rex Winters? That poor family lost everything trying to save that dog, and now they're losing their home." The mention of Rex silenced Emily momentarily. She hadn't known the Winters were losing their home. The guilt of not being able to save Rex, despite their best efforts, still weighed heavily on the entire shelter staff. "That's different," David interjected. "Rex was a hero. He saved that little girl's life. And bankrupted her family in the process," Margaret countered. "Now I hear they're trying to surrender another dog. When does it end, Miss Matthews? How many families have to be disrupted before you admit your methods aren't working?" Inside the shelter, the animals had begun to react to the tension outside. Barks and howls echoed through the building, creating an eerily appropriate backdrop to the confrontation. From somewhere inside, Emily heard Zoo's distinct, mournful howl. "I understand your concerns," Emily finally said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "And I agree that we can always improve our processes. But shutting down our rehabilitation program isn't the answer. These animals deserve—" "What they deserve," Margaret interrupted, "is professional handling, not your sentimental approach to dangerous animals. The neighborhood council meets next week. We expect you to present a complete overhaul of your adoption policies, or we'll be forced to take this to the city council." As the crowd began to disperse, Emily clutched Sarah's locket, her anchor in difficult moments. She knew that somewhere in the growing crisis was an opportunity, a chance to bridge the gap between the shelter's mission and the community's fears. What she didn't know was that Zoo's story would soon challenge everything both sides thought they knew about rehabilitation, healing, and the true meaning of second chances. The afternoon following the protest, Rachel Martinez stood at the shelter's front desk, her hand trembling slightly as she filled out the adoption application. Through the corridor windows, she could see Zoo in the exercise yard displaying the same gentle awareness she'd witnessed in Luna. "Dr. Martinez," David's surprise was evident as he recognized her. "I didn't expect to see you here," not after he trailed off, both of them remembering the night they'd lost Rex, despite their best efforts. "I know," Rachel said softly, continuing to write. "But something about this dog. I saw her profile online and I just knew." She hesitated, then added, "Isabella hasn't spoken in public since Luna left. Maybe." Emily emerged from her office, stopping short when she saw Rachel. The tension was immediate. The last time they'd been in the same room was during Rex's final moments. Emily had blamed herself for not identifying his internal injuries sooner. Rachel had blamed herself for not being able to save him. "I want to adopt Zoo," Rachel stated before Emily could speak. "I've reviewed her intake forms. I know she's special, and with my experience with therapy dogs." "No," the voice came from behind them, sharp and decisive. Margaret Wilson stood in the doorway, her eyes narrowing. "Absolutely not. First the Henderson incident, and now this." Emily stepped forward protectively. "Mrs. Wilson, you don't have any authority over our adoption processes." "I have every right to protect our community," Margaret countered. "Dr. Martinez couldn't save Rex Winters. Now she wants to experiment with another traumatized dog? The same vet who's lost how many critical cases this year?" Rachel flinched as if struck. The cases Margaret referred to had been impossible situations, animals brought in too late, injuries too severe. Rex's loss had shaken her confidence, but hearing it weaponized against her was devastating. "That's completely unfair," Emily defended. "Dr. Martinez is one of the most qualified." "Qualified," Margaret scoffed. "Is that why she sent her own therapy dog away? Now her daughter won't even speak, and we're supposed to trust her with another special needs animal." Rachel's hands clenched on the application form. Luna's retirement was a medical necessity. She wasn't sent away. She's living with a dedicated retirement family in Houston. As for my daughter..." Your personal life proves my point, Margaret interrupted. You can barely handle your own family's trauma. How can you possibly take on another challenging case? The words hung in the air like poison. Emily watched Rachel's face pale, saw the way her shoulders curved inward under the weight of public judgment. But then something changed, a straightening of her spine, a lift of her chin. You're right, Rachel said quietly, surprising everyone. I couldn't save Rex. I live with that guilt every day. Luna's retirement broke my daughter's heart, and yes, Isabella's struggling. But that's exactly why I understand what these animals need. She turned to Emily, her voice gaining strength. I know trauma, both human and animal. I know what it's like to fail despite giving everything you have. But I also know healing is possible. Luna proved that with Isabella once before. Sometimes the deepest wounds create the strongest understanding. Emily felt tears prick her eyes, remembering Sarah, remembering Max. She looked at the application in Rachel's hands, then through the window at Zoo, who had moved to the fence and was watching their interaction intently. The community meeting is next week, Margaret warned. If you approve this adoption, I'll make sure the council hears about it. We don't need another tragedy in this neighborhood. Emily took the application from Rachel's hands, aware that her next decision could either save or doom the shelter's rehabilitation program. But as she looked at the form, she remembered something Sarah used to say: sometimes the biggest risks lead to the greatest healing. I'll review your application, Dr. Martinez, Emily said firmly, meeting Margaret's outraged stare. With the same thorough process we use for every potential adopter. No more, no less. As Margaret stormed out, Rachel sagged slightly against the desk. Thank you, she whispered, for giving me a chance. Emily nodded, understanding that this moment was about more than just one dog or one family. It was about standing up for second chances, about believing in healing despite the risk of failure. What no one in the room could have known was that Zoo's story was about to connect them all in ways that would challenge everything they thought they knew about redemption. Later that evening, as Emily reviewed Rachel's application, David burst into her office, clutching a worn manila folder he'd excavated from the shelter's archives. You need to see this, he said, spreading the documents across her desk. The top paper was Luna's original breeding records. Emily scanned them quickly, then stopped, her hand flying to her mouth. This can't be, she whispered, comparing the documents to Zoo's intake forms. Keep reading, David urged, pulling out more papers. The connection was undeniable. Zoo was Luna's last puppy, born just before the elderly therapy dog's retirement. But there was more. Emily's hands trembled as she read Rex's original adoption papers from 12 years ago. Rex and Luna were from the same training program she breathed. They trained together before the Winters adopted Rex. The implications began to unfold like a complex tapestry. Luna, who had helped Isabella find her voice, was Zoo's mother. Rex, who had sacrificed himself for Sophie, had been Luna's training partner. A knock at the door interrupted their discovery. Catherine Winters stood there, looking exhausted, holding Zoo's paperwork. We've come to surrender her officially, she said, her voice breaking. We can't keep her at the apartment, and... She stopped, noticing the scattered papers on Emily's desk. Her eyes locked on a photo of a younger Rex with Luna. Where did you get this? Emily gestured for Catherine to sit down. Mrs. Winters, there's something you need to know about Zoo, she explained the connection, watching Catherine's eyes widen with each revelation. So when Zoo kept returning to Rex's favorite spots, Catherine whispered, she wasn't just missing him. She was following her mother's memory of him. David pulled up the shelter's computer records. There's more, he said. Look at the dates. The day Rex was brought to Dr. Martinez's clinic. Luna was there. She stayed with him until the end. Catherine covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking. Sophie's been saying Zoo reminds her of Rex. The way she watches over her, how she seems to understand when she's upset. We thought we were imagining it. Emily leaned forward. Mrs. Winters, Dr. Martinez has applied to adopt Zoo. She watched Catherine stiffen. But knowing what we know now, I think there might be a different solution. Before she could continue, Rachel appeared in the doorway, Isabella hovering silently behind her. She'd returned to drop off additional paperwork, but stopped short at the scene before her. Catherine turned, recognizing the vet who'd tried to save Rex. Dr. Martinez, Catherine said softly, I never got to thank you properly, for staying with him, for trying so hard. Isabella stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the photo of Luna and Rex. To everyone's surprise, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. They were friends. The room fell silent. It was the first time Isabella had spoken in public since Luna's retirement. Rachel gripped the doorframe for support, tears filling her eyes. Emily looked between the two families, one broken by loss, the other struggling to heal. In Zhu Yu, she saw the bridge between their stories. The dog who carried Rex's training legacy through Luna, who had inherited her mother's gift for healing. What if Emily said carefully, instead of surrendering Zhu or adopting her outright? We tried something different. She outlined her emerging idea, a shared arrangement that would keep Zhu connected to both families, honoring both her heritage and her potential. Catherine's eyes met Rachel's across the room. Between them lay a shared understanding of loss, of guilt, of the desperate need for healing. Isabella had drifted to the window where Zhu Yu sat in her kennel. The dog's attention was fixed on their office, as if she understood the magnitude of what was unfolding. "Sophie should meet Isabella," Catherine said finally. "Before we decide anything, they both lost so much." Rachel nodded, finding her voice. "Luna taught me something important. Sometimes healing doesn't follow the expected path. Sometimes it needs to create its own way." As the two mothers began tentatively discussing possibilities, Emily clutched Sarah's locket. In all her years at the shelter, she'd never seen connections like this, a web of past and present, loss and hope, all centered around one remarkable dog. What none of them could have known was that their discovery would soon be tested in ways they couldn't imagine, as community pressure and personal demons threatened to unravel everything before it could begin. The morning of Zhu's scheduled transfer arrived with a weight that hung heavy over the winter's nearly empty house. Sophie hadn't spoken since yesterday when she overheard her parents discussing the shared custody arrangement with Dr. Martinez. Now she sat in Rex's old spot under the oak tree, Zhu's head resting in her lap, both of them watching the moving truck take away the last pieces of their old life. "Sophie, honey," Catherine called softly from the back door. "It's time." The girl didn't move. Her fingers twisted in Zhu Yu's fur, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Thomas approached carefully, carrying Zhu's leash, and that's when Sophie finally broke. "You promised," she screamed, wrapping her arms around Zhu's neck. "When we got her, you promised she'd be forever. Just like Rex, the force of her cry startled a flock of birds from the oak tree. You promised Rex too, and now he's gone, and our house is gone, and everything's gone." Catherine rushed forward, but Sophie scrambled to her feet, backing away. Zhu stayed close to the distraught girl, pressing against her legs supportively. "Sophie, please try to understand." No, Sophie's face was red with anger and tears. "You didn't try hard enough to save Rex. You didn't fight hard enough to keep our house. And now you're giving Zhu away too." Her voice cracked with betrayal. "Everyone leaves. Everyone always leaves." Thomas stepped forward, his own eyes wet. "Princess, we're not giving Zhu away. She'll still be part of our family, just in a different way. Dr. Martinez and Isabella." "I don't care about Isabella," Sophie shouted. "I don't care if Zhu's mom was Luna. I don't care about any of it. Zhu is ours. She's all we have left of Rex." She turned to the dog, who watched her with concerned eyes so much like Rex's. "Tell them, Zhu Yu, tell them you want to stay." The dog whined softly, caught between Sophie's distress and the palpable pain of her parents. She nudged Sophie's hand with her nose, just as Rex used to do when the girl was upset. "See," Sophie whispered, her anger crumbling into despair. "She knows. She remembers Rex too. She's the only one who understands." Her legs gave out, and she sank to the ground, Zhu immediately curling around her protectively. Catherine tried to approach again, but Sophie flinched away. "You said Rex was a hero," she sobbed. "But heroes aren't supposed to die. They're not supposed to leave. You said we'd always be a family, but families don't fall apart like this." Thomas knelt in the grass, keeping a careful distance. "Sometimes being a family means making hard choices, Sophie. Sometimes it means—" "I hate you," Sophie burst out, the words echoing across the empty backyard. "I hate all of this. I wish I'd been the one hit by the car instead of Rex. Then he'd still be here, and Zhu Yu would stay, and everything wouldn't be ruined." The words hung in the air like shattered glass. Catherine covered her mouth, a strangled sound escaping. Thomas went pale. Zoo lifted her head, letting out a long, mournful howl that seemed to carry all their pain. "Baby, no," Catherine choked out, moving forward despite Sophie's resistance and pulling her daughter into her arms. This time, Sophie didn't fight. She collapsed against her mother, her body racked with sobs. "I miss him so much," Sophie cried. "I talk to his picture every night, but he doesn't answer. I pretend he's still here, but he's not. And now Zuyu. She's the only piece of him we have left. Please, Mom. Please, Mom. Please don't let her go too." Thomas joined them on the ground, enfolding his family in his arms. Zuyu pressed close, creating a circle of shared grief and love. They stayed that way for a long time until Sophie's sobs quieted to hiccups. "I'm scared," she finally whispered. "What if Isabella's family decides to keep her forever? What if Zoo forgets about us? What if?" "Oh, sweetheart," Catherine stroked her daughter's hair. "Love doesn't work that way. Rex proved that. His love for you was so strong that he gave everything to keep you safe. That kind of love doesn't end. It changes shape sometimes, but it never goes away." As if understanding, Zuyu gently took the hem of Sophie's shirt in her teeth and gesture Rex had often used to lead her to safety and tugged her toward the house. Toward the future they needed to face, however uncertain it might be. The shelter's meeting room felt smaller than usual as Isabella Martinez sat cross-legged on the floor, her journal clutched tightly to her chest. Rachel watched anxiously from the corner as Emily led Zuyu into the room, the German shepherd's nails clicking softly on the tile floor. "She can sit with you as long as you want," Emily said gently, but Isabella showed no sign of hearing. Her eyes were fixed on Zuyu, who had stopped a few feet away, head tilted in a gesture so reminiscent of Luna that Rachel had to grip the chair to steady herself. The room fell into silence. Emily and Rachel exchanged worried glances. They'd tried similar introductions with other dogs since Luna's departure, but Isabella had remained locked in her silent world. Each failed attempt had pushed her further into isolation. Zoo settled onto the floor, maintaining a respectful distance. Unlike other dogs who had tried to approach Isabella directly, she seemed to understand the need for patience. Her calm presence filled the room, just as Luna's had done countless times before. Isabella's fingers traced the worn edges of her journal, the one where she'd written all her unsaid words since Luna left. Slowly, carefully, she opened it to a dog-eared page covered in her neat handwriting. "Dear Luna," she whispered, so softly that Rachel almost missed it. The sound of her daughter's voice in public made her breath catch. "I miss you." Zoo's ears pricked forward, but she didn't move. Isabella turned the page, her voice growing slightly stronger. "Sometimes I pretend you're still here. When the thoughts get too loud and the words stick in my throat," she glanced at Zuyu, then back at her journal. "Mom says you're happy in Houston, but I wonder if you miss me too." Rachel pressed her hand to her mouth, tears sliding down her cheeks. Emily stood perfectly still, afraid any movement might break the spell. Isabella looked directly at Zuyu now. "You have her eyes," she said. "Mom says you're her daughter, that you were born right before her voice cracked, before she had to leave." Zoo shifted slightly, her tail sweeping the floor in a gentle arc. Isabella touched the charm bracelet on her wrist, each bead earned during her therapy sessions with Luna. Luna understood. Isabella continued, her voice trembling. "When Dad didn't come home from deployment, I couldn't talk. The words hurt too much. But Luna," she took a shaky breath. "Luna showed me how to be brave." Slowly, so slowly it seemed like part of a dream, Zooey inched forward. She stopped when she was close enough for Isabella to touch, but didn't demand attention. Instead, she lowered her head and released a soft whine, the same sound Luna would make when Isabella was struggling. Isabella's hand shook as she reached out, barely brushing Zoo's ear. "You know, don't you," she whispered, "about the hard days. About how sometimes being quiet feels safer than being heard." Zuyu leaned gently into her touch, and something in Isabella seemed to break and heal simultaneously. "I didn't want to love another dog," she admitted, tears falling freely now. It felt like betraying Luna. Like giving up on her coming back. Rachel started to move forward, but Emily caught her arm, shaking her head. This moment needed to unfold on its own. "But you're not a replacement, are you?" Isabella's voice grew stronger with each word. "You're a connection, a piece of her. Still here," her fingers found the spot behind Zoo's ear that Luna had loved. Maybe that's what Mom meant about love growing instead of ending. Zoo shifted closer, laying her head in Isabella's lap exactly as Luna used to do. Isabella's breath hitched, but she didn't pull away. "I know about Sophie," she said softly to the dog, "about Rex and how much she's hurting." Luna helped me find my voice. Maybe she glanced at her mother, then back to Zoo. "Maybe you can help us both." As if in answer, Zhu Yu pressed closer, her steady presence anchoring Isabella in the moment. Rachel watched in awe as her daughter's shoulders relaxed, the tension she'd carried for months easing slightly. "Hi, Zhu," Isabella said clearly, her voice carrying across the room for the first time in months. "I'm Isabella, and I think maybe we were meant to find each other." Emily stood before the shelter's board of directors, her presentation materials spread across the conference table. Through the window, she could see both families waiting anxiously in the courtyard, Sophie and Isabella sitting together with Zhu Yu between them, their parents maintaining a respectful distance. "What you're proposing is unprecedented," Director Anderson said, reviewing the documents. "Shared custody of a shelter animal. It goes against every standard adoption protocol we have." "Sometimes unprecedented situations require unprecedented solutions," Emily replied, pulling out her research. "Look at the behavioral assessments. Zhu Yu displays remarkable emotional intelligence, even beyond what we typically see in therapy dogs. She connects with both girls in uniquely powerful ways." Board member Jenkins leaned forward. "But the liability issues alone." Recovered, Emily interrupted, sliding forward a carefully prepared legal document. "I've consulted with our attorneys. Both families are willing to sign extended responsibility agreements. Dr. Martinez's veterinary credentials and experience with therapy dogs provide professional oversight." "And the Winters family," another board member asked. "Their financial situation is precisely why this arrangement could work," Emily said firmly. "The Martinez family can provide the stable home environment and medical care Zhu Yu needs, while the Winters maintain their emotional connection without the financial burden of full ownership." Director Anderson sighed. "Emily, your heart's in the right place, but after the community protests, we need to be especially careful. If this fails, I'll take full responsibility," Emily stated. "But please look at what's already happening." She gestured to the window. Outside, Sophie was showing Isabella a trick she'd taught Zhu, their laughter carrying faintly through the glass. Two traumatized children finding their way back to joy. Isn't that worth taking a chance? She pulled out her final piece of evidence, a video from that morning's interaction session. The footage showed Zhu moving seamlessly between both girls, responding to their emotional needs with uncanny precision, creating a bridge of communication between them. "This isn't just about saving one dog or helping two families," Emily explained. "It's about reimagining what healing can look like. Think about other situations: divorced families who can't bear to separate their pets, elderly pet owners who need support but don't want to surrender their companions, therapy dogs who could serve multiple families." The board members watched the video in silence. On screen, Isabella was reading aloud from her journal while Sophie listened, Zhu's presence giving them both the courage to share their grief and hope. "There's something else you should know," Emily added quietly. "Margaret Wilson is planning to attend next week's city council meeting. She's going to push for restrictions on our rehabilitation program, but imagine if instead of defending our current practices, we could present this as an innovative new approach to community-centered animal welfare." Director Anderson removed his glasses, rubbing his eyes. "You're asking us to take an enormous risk, Emily, if anything goes wrong." "Everything's already gone wrong for these families," Emily interrupted passionately. "They've lost homes, loved ones, their sense of security, but look at them now." She pointed out the window again, where both mothers had joined their daughters, tentatively beginning to talk while their children played with Zhu Yu. "They're finding a way forward together. Isn't that what we're all about? Second chances, not just for animals, but for the people who love them." The board members exchanged glances. Finally, Director Anderson spoke. "We'll need a detailed custody agreement, regular evaluations, clear protocols for handling any issues that arise." Emily's heart leaped. "I have drafts prepared. We can." And Emily, he held up his hand. "This is a pilot program only. One case, carefully monitored. If it succeeds, we can discuss expanding the model." Understood, Emily agreed quickly. Thank you. You won't regret this. As the board filed out, Emily gathered her materials with trembling hands. Through the window, she watched Zoo orchestrate a moment of connection, nudging Sophie to show Isabella a photo on her phone, encouraging Isabella to share a page from her journal. Two broken families, slowly becoming something new and whole. Sarah's locket felt warm against her skin. You were right, little sister, she whispered. Sometimes the biggest risks lead to the greatest healing. The first weeks of the shared custody arrangement tested everyone's patience and resilience. Despite the carefully crafted schedule, weekdays with the Martinez family, weekends with the Winters reality proved far messier than theory. The first major challenge came on day 3. Sophie arrived at the Martinez home for her scheduled afternoon visit to find Isabella in the midst of an anxiety attack. Zuu, sensing the tension, stayed firmly by Isabella's side, leaving Sophie standing awkwardly in the doorway, fighting tears of rejection. "It's my time," Sophie whispered, her voice trembling. "She's supposed to be with me now." Rachel watched helplessly as the girl's hands clenched into fists, recognizing the signs of an impending breakdown. Catherine, who had driven Sophie over, tried to intervene. "Sweetheart, maybe we can." "No," Sophie's shout startled everyone. "First Rex leaves, then our house, and now Zoo doesn't even want me anymore." She turned to run, but crashed directly into Thomas, who had just arrived from work. "Princess," he started, but Sophie was already sobbing into his shirt. Meanwhile, Isabella had curled further into herself, Zuyu pressed against her protectively. The dog's divided loyalty was visible in her anxious glances between the two girls. Rachel made a quick decision. "Sophie," she said gently, kneeling beside the distraught girl, "did you know that when Luna Zoo's mother was training, she taught us something very important? Sometimes helping someone else can help us feel better too." Sophie looked up, tears still streaming. "What do you mean?" "Isabella's having what we call an anxiety attack. Luna used to help her through them, and now Zuyu knows how too. Would you like to learn?" Slowly, Sophie nodded. Rachel guided her to sit near Isabella, but not too close. "Watch how Zoo does it," she suggested. "See how she stays calm and steady." For the next hour, Sophie observed and then began to mimic Zoo's techniques, the gentle presence, the patient waiting. Gradually, Isabella's breathing steadied. When she finally looked up, she found Sophie holding out a tissue. "Rex used to bring me tissues when I cried," Sophie explained softly. "He'd nose them out of the box until he got one." Isabella managed a small smile. "Luna used to lay her head in my lap and sigh really big, like she was saying everything's too dramatic." The moment marked a turning point, but other challenges quickly emerged. The Martinez's neighbors complained about Sophie's daily visits disrupting their quiet street. The Winters' new apartment building manager threatened to evict them when he discovered their part-time dog. Even simple logistics became complicated. Zoo's favorite toy got left at one house while she was staying at the other. Her special food ran out at the Martinez's because each family thought the other had ordered more. A miscommunication about pickup times left Zoo waiting at the shelter's neutral exchange point for over an hour. Then came the night terrors. Zoo, struggling to adjust to the constant changes, began waking up disoriented, searching for whichever family she wasn't with. Her distress triggered Sophie's grief and Isabella's anxiety, creating a cycle of sleepless nights for everyone. Maybe this was a mistake, Catherine confided to Rachel during one particularly difficult exchange. "Maybe we're asking too much of all of them." Rachel watched as Zoo moved between the girls, who were showing each other photos on their phones, Sophie sharing pictures of Rex, Isabella displaying images of Luna. "Look at them, though," she said softly. "A month ago, my daughter barely spoke, and Sophie couldn't talk about Rex without crying. Now." They observed as Isabella reached for Zoo's brush, showing Sophie the special way Luna had liked to be groomed. Sophie, in turn, demonstrated Rex's favorite game, hiding treats in empty paper towel rolls. Zoo participated enthusiastically in both activities, her presence creating a bridge between their separate griefs. The breakthrough came unexpectedly during week 6. Both families had gathered at the shelter for Emily's mandatory check-in when a storm hit. Thunder rattled the windows, and both girls instinctively reached for Zoo. Instead of choosing between them, the dog positioned herself so she was touching both children, offering comfort to each in their own way, a paw on Sophie's leg, her head against Isabella's knee. "That's it," Emily breathed, watching the interaction. "We've been thinking about this all wrong. It's not about dividing Zoo's time, it's about multiplying her love." The families began to adjust their approach. Instead of rigid schedules, they started focusing on creating shared experiences. The Martinez's back garden became a weekend gathering spot, where both families would have lunch while the girls played with Zuyu. The Winters apartment complex manager, witnessing the change in Sophie, not only withdrew his objection but offered their community room for rainy day visits. Slowly, the challenges began to transform into opportunities for growth. When Zuyu seemed unsettled, the girls worked together to create identical comfort corners in both homes. When scheduling conflicts arose, they learned to communicate and compromise. Even the neighbors who had complained found themselves drawn into the unique arrangement, offering to dog sit during family emergencies or helping to coordinate exchanges. The initial harmony of the shared custody arrangement faced its first major public challenge during a neighborhood council meeting. Margaret Wilson stood at the podium, her voice sharp with disapproval as she addressed the packed room. "This experimental arrangement isn't just unorthodox, it's dangerous," she declared, projecting photos of previous shelter incidents onto the screen. "We have children being shuttled between homes, a dog with an uncertain history, and a clear disregard for standard adoption protocols." The crowd murmured, and Rachel felt neighbors who had previously been friendly turned to stare at her family. Isabella pressed closer to her mother's side while Sophie gripped her father's hand tightly. "Let's talk about the Winters family," Margaret continued, her voice dripping with false concern. "Already forced to leave their home due to financial troubles stemming from their last dog's medical bills. Now they're involving another family in their instability." Thomas Winters stood up, his face flushed. "How dare you?" And Dr. Martinez, Margaret cut him off. A veterinarian who couldn't save their previous dog, now experimenting with a new approach to therapy animals, using her own daughter as a test subject. Isabella whimpered softly, and Zuyu, who had been lying quietly at their feet, raised her head alertly. Rachel's hands trembled with suppressed anger. The attacks escalated beyond the meeting. Anonymous complaints began flooding the shelter. Parents at Sophie's school pulled their children away when she approached. Isabella's therapy center received calls questioning the safety of having a part-time shelter dog around vulnerable patients. The pressure reached a breaking point when someone posted flyers around both neighborhoods warning dangerous dog experiment in progress. "Keep your children safe." The flyers featured a menacing photo of a German Shepherd baring its teeth, not Zoo, but the implication was clear. Emily arrived at the Martinez home one morning to find Rachel in tears. "They're threatening to revoke my clinic's therapy dog certification," she explained. "They say the arrangement violates professional guidelines." At the Winters apartment, the situation was equally dire. Their landlord had received multiple complaints about unauthorized pet visits and was threatening eviction. Sophie came home from school crying after overhearing classmates call her family those irresponsible dog people. The opposition took an unexpected turn when local media picked up the story. A news van parked outside the shelter, reporters hoping to catch footage of the families during their exchanges. The headline in the local paper read, "Controversial dog sharing scheme raises community concerns." Both families retreated, conducting their exchanges in secret, using back entrances and meeting in parking lots. The girls, once proud of their unique arrangement, became ashamed and secretive. Isabella stopped bringing Zuyu to her therapy sessions. Sophie quit the animal club she'd recently joined at school. But then something unexpected happened. Mrs. Henderson, the elderly neighbor who had first found Zuyu, spoke up at a community meeting. "I've lived in this neighborhood for 40 years, she said, her voice wavering but determined. "I watched Sophie grow up with Rex. I saw how that dog saved her life. And now I watch these two broken families healing each other through love and courage. Shame on all of you for trying to destroy that." Her words sparked a counter-movement. Other neighbors began sharing their own stories. The parent of another child at Isabella's therapy center wrote a letter to the board describing how his son had spoken for the first time in months after meeting Zuyu during a session. The local veterinary community rallied around Rachel. Dr. Thompson, a respected senior veterinarian, publicly praised the innovative approach to animal therapy. In 30 years of practice, he wrote, "I've never seen a more thoughtful and well-monitored arrangement." Even some former critics began to change their minds. The Winters landlord, after witnessing Sophie comfort a younger resident using techniques she'd learned from Isabella, became an unexpected ally. He revised the building's pet policy to officially accommodate their unique situation. The turning point came when both families decided to stop hiding. They organized an open house at the shelter, inviting the community to see firsthand what their arrangement actually looked like. Emily created a presentation showing Zoo's progress reports, behavioral assessments, and the positive impact on both girls. Visitors watched in amazement as Sophie and Isabella demonstrated how they worked together with Zoo, the hand signals they'd developed, the way they supported each other during anxiety attacks, the careful coordination of care routines. The dog moved seamlessly between them, her gentle presence a testament to the success of their unconventional approach. Margaret Wilson attended, standing silently in the back. She watched as Zoo helped a visiting child overcome his fear of dogs, using the same patient techniques that had helped Isabella find her voice. When the event ended, she approached Emily, her usual confidence notably subdued. "Perhaps," she said stiffly, "I may have been hasty in my judgments." As autumn painted the Austin trees in gold and crimson, the relationship between the Winters and Martinez families deepened in unexpected ways. What had begun as a practical arrangement centered around Zoo evolved into something neither family had anticipated. The catalyst came during a routine Sunday exchange. Sophie arrived at the Martinez home clutching her math textbook, tears of frustration evident. "I have a test tomorrow," she confessed. "But ever since we moved, Dad's been working double shifts and Mom." She trailed off, not wanting to mention her mother's exhaustion from cleaning houses to make ends meet. Isabella, who had been silently observing, disappeared into her room and returned with her own math notebook. In careful handwriting, she had documented every step of similar problems. Rachel watched in amazement as her daughter, who still barely spoke above a whisper in public, patiently walked Sophie through the concepts. That evening, when Catherine came to pick up Sophie, Rachel made an impromptu suggestion. "Why don't we make this a regular thing? Sunday study sessions. I could help with science too, lots of veterinary applications in biology." The academic support expanded naturally. Thomas, despite his exhaustion, began teaching Isabella basic carpentry on weekends while the girls played with Zoo in the backyard. Catherine, a former English teacher before the financial crisis, helped both girls with their literature assignments. Then came the day Rachel discovered Catherine cleaning houses in her neighborhood. The proud woman froze, cleaning supplies in hand, clearly mortified. Rather than pretend not to notice, Rachel invited her in for coffee. "I have some regular clients who've been asking about house cleaning services," Rachel said carefully. "Would you be interested in some referrals? People I know will treat you with respect." Catherine's eyes welled with tears. "We're behind on Sophie's therapy bills," she admitted, "and the new apartment's heating is terrible." That weekend, Rachel and Isabella arrived at the Winters apartment with space heaters and warm blankets. "Luna taught us about creating safe spaces," Isabella explained softly, showing Sophie how to arrange the blankets in a cozy reading nook. "Sometimes comfort comes from making things warm." The families began sharing meals, first on exchange days, then more regularly. They discovered Thomas's talent for grilling, Rachel's secret family recipes, Catherine's gift for making celebrations special even on a tight budget. Isabella started setting an extra place at their table on nights when Thomas worked late, ensuring Catherine and Sophie wouldn't eat alone. During one such dinner, Sophie noticed Rachel struggling with the clinic's scheduling software. "Oh, my dad's really good with computers," she exclaimed. He used to do it before she hesitated, but Rachel understood. The next day, she offered Thomas a part-time position managing the clinic's systems, working around his other job. His expertise soon proved invaluable, streamlining operations in ways that saved the clinic money and improved patient care. The winter holidays approached, bringing new challenges. Both families were facing tight budgets and painful memories of previous celebrations. Instead of celebrating separately, they decided to combine their resources and traditions. The Martinez's spacious living room became command central for holiday preparations. Sophie taught Isabella her family's cookie recipes, while Isabella shared her father's military tradition of creating care packages for those in need. Together, they made ornaments featuring photos of Rex and Luna, honoring the dogs who had brought them together. Zuyu watched these developments with what seemed like satisfaction, no longer showing signs of stress during transitions. She had developed a unique way of greeting each family member, a special paw tap for Thomas, a gentle head bump for Rachel, a playful dance for both girls. The most profound change became evident during a crisis. When Isabella had a severe anxiety attack at school, it was Sophie who recognized the signs and knew exactly what to do, using the techniques they'd developed together with Zuyu. Later that week, when Sophie broke down missing Rex, Isabella sat with her in silence, offering the same steady presence she'd learned from her therapy sessions. Catherine found unexpected support in Rachel's medical knowledge, finally understanding the full extent of Rex's condition and finding closure in knowing they had done everything possible for him. Rachel, in turn, began to forgive herself for not being able to save Rex, seeing how his loss had ultimately led to this new beginning. The family's growing connection caught Emily's attention during their monthly assessments. "You're not just sharing a dog anymore," she observed, watching Sophie help Isabella with her speech therapy exercises while their parents discussed upcoming week schedule. "You're sharing strength." One evening, as both families sat in the Martinez's backyard watching the girls teach Zuyu a new trick, Thomas voiced what they'd all been feeling. "You know," he said quietly, "when we lost Rex, I thought our family was broken beyond repair. I never imagined that sharing another dog would give Sophie not just a second chance with Zuyu, but a whole second family." Rachel reached over to squeeze Catherine's hand. "Luna taught Isabella that healing doesn't always look the way we expect," she replied. "Sometimes it looks like two families becoming something new together." The email arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning, its implications sending ripples through both families' carefully constructed routine. The prestigious Houston Canine Therapy Training Center had heard about their unique arrangement and wanted Zuyu to participate in their innovative therapy dog program. 3 weeks, Sophie's voice cracked as Rachel read the invitation aloud. Both families had gathered in the Martinez living room for the announcement. "But that's forever. We can't just send her away." Isabella, who had been sketching in her journal, stopped abruptly. Her fingers found Zuyu's fur gripping tightly. The dog, sensing the tension, pressed closer to her side. "It's an incredible opportunity," Rachel explained carefully. "They want to study Zuyu's ability to work with multiple families, to use her as a model for training other therapy dogs. This could help so many children like you both." "But why Houston?" Catherine asked, noting how both girls had paled at the prospect. "Surely there are programs closer to home." Emily, who had joined them for the discussion, pulled out additional documentation. "The Houston Center is where Luna trained," she explained gently. "They have unmatched expertise in family therapy dogs. And," she hesitated, glancing at Isabella, "Luna is there now, in their retirement facility." The room fell silent. Isabella's grip on Zuyu loosened slightly, her expression conflicted. Sophie watched her friend's reaction closely, their months together having taught her to read Isabella's subtle emotional cues. Sophie started, then swallowed hard. "Would we get to visit her there?" Rachel and Catherine exchanged glances. The trip would be expensive, requiring time off work they could barely afford. Thomas cleared his throat. "Maybe we could figure something out. Split the costs, take turns." "The center is offering to cover accommodations for both families," Emily interjected. "They're very interested in documenting the entire process, including the family's involvement." Isabella suddenly stood up, startling everyone. She walked to her mother's desk and returned with a photo of Luna. Holding it up to Zuyu, she spoke softly she should meet her mom. The simple statement cut through all the adult concerns about logistics and finances. Zuyu looked between the photo and Isabella, her tail wagging gently as if she understood. "But what about school?" Sophie protested weakly, though her resolve was clearly wavering. "And my therapy sessions?" "Actually," Rachel said, "your therapist thinks this could be beneficial. Learning to handle temporary separation, knowing Zuyu will return. And the school principal has agreed to let both of you do some remote learning, considering the educational value of the experience." Thomas leaned forward. "Princess, remember what you told Isabella about Rex? How he was brave when it mattered most. Maybe this is Zoo's chance to be brave too, to help other dogs learn what she knows about healing hearts." Sophie's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded slowly, like how she helped us become friends. Isabella moved to sit beside Sophie, something she rarely did when feeling anxious. She opened her journal, showing a drawing she'd been working on Zuyu surrounded by other dogs, teaching them to help children smile. "We could make a project out of it," Rachel suggested, seeing an opportunity to channel the girls' anxiety into something productive. "Document everything for the center, show them how special your connection with Zoo is." The family spent the next hour discussing possibilities. Catherine suggested creating a daily video diary. Thomas offered to set up a secure blog where the girls could share their experiences. Emily provided insights into the training center's programs and what they hoped to learn from Zoo. As the adults talked logistics, Sophie and Isabella sat together on the floor with Zoo, speaking in quiet voices about their fears and hopes. The dog moved between them with her usual grace, offering comfort to each in turn. "3 weeks is a really long time," Sophie whispered to Isabella. "Luna was gone longer," Isabella replied, her voice barely audible. "But she didn't forget me. Zoo won't forget us either." The girls' quiet acceptance of the situation moved the adults deeply. What had started as a challenging proposal was transforming into an opportunity for growth, not just for Zoo, but for everyone involved. "We'll make it work," Catherine declared, looking around at their unlikely extended family. Together. Emily watched the scene with satisfaction, remembering Sarah's words about taking chances. In Zoo's eyes, she saw the same steadfast devotion that had marked her relationship with both Rex and Luna, a legacy of healing being passed down through generations of remarkable dogs. The first week without Zoo tested everyone's resilience in ways they hadn't anticipated. Sophie's nightmares about Rex returned with renewed intensity, while Isabella retreated into near-complete silence at school. Both families struggled to maintain their routines without their four-legged bridge. "She made it safely to Houston," Emily reported during a video call with both families gathered in the Martinez living room. The screen showed Zoo exploring her new temporary quarters at the training center. "But she's been checking every room, like she's looking for you all." Sophie pressed her face into her mother's shoulder, unable to watch. Isabella clutched her journal, her knuckles white. The adults exchanged worried glances, wondering if they'd made the right decision. The breakthrough came unexpectedly during that first difficult weekend. Unable to sleep, Sophie had texted Isabella at midnight, "Do you think Zuyu misses Rex like I do?" Isabella, also awake, responded immediately, "Luna used to get sad sometimes. Mom said it's okay to miss someone and still be brave." That small exchange sparked an idea. The girls began creating a shared digital diary, documenting their feelings and experiences without Zoo. Their entries revealed both their struggles and their growing strength. Sophie's entry, "Day 3 today, I found one of Zoo's tennis balls under my bed. Usually I'd cry, but instead I remembered how Isabella teaches me to breathe when things get hard. It helped." Isabella's entry, "Day 5, had to give a presentation in class. Scared without Zoo. But I imagined Sophie there, being brave like she is with me. I spoke loud enough for everyone to hear." The training center sent daily updates, but it was the unexpected moments that proved most healing. During a video call, they watched Zoo demonstrate to other dogs how to approach anxious children using the same gentle technique she'd learned with Sophie and Isabella. "She's teaching them what you taught her," Rachel observed, watching her daughter's face light up with pride. Catherine noticed something else. "Look how she checks the camera between demonstrations," she pointed out. "She knows we're watching. She's showing us she remembers." The separation began fostering independence in unexpected ways. Sophie, missing their study sessions, started a homework help group at school. Isabella, drawing on her experience with Luna and Zuyu, volunteered to help a new student who struggled with anxiety. One particularly difficult night, when both girls were struggling, they decided to sleep over at the Martinez house. In Zoo's absence, they found comfort in sharing stories about Rex and Luna, creating a tapestry of memories that connected their experiences. Rex used to put his paw on my homework when I was stressed, Sophie shared, demonstrating with a stuffed animal, like he was saying, take a break. Isabella nodded. Luna would bring me her brush when I wouldn't talk. Grooming her helped calm my thoughts. The parents watched this exchange with mixed emotions. They're healing each other, Thomas observed quietly. Zhu taught them how, but now they're doing it on their own. By the second week, both families had developed new rhythms. They maintained their shared dinners, finding strength in their combined presence. The girls started a project creating a welcome home book for Zhu, filled with photos and stories from both families. The training center's reports grew increasingly positive. Zhu was excelling in her role, demonstrating an exceptional ability to work with multiple children and families. Her success was becoming a model for a new approach to therapy dog training. She's not just sharing love between two families anymore, Emily explained during their weekly update. She's teaching other dogs how to create these connections. Your unique arrangement is helping to reshape how we think about therapy animals. The girls' pride in Zhu's accomplishments began to outweigh their sadness. They started making plans for her return, determined to show her how much they'd grown. Maybe Sophie suggested during one of their late-night talks we needed to learn we could be strong without her too, like she's strong without Rex and Luna. Isabella added in her quiet way, Mom says love doesn't get smaller when it's shared. It gets bigger by teaching others. As the third week approached, both families could see the changes in themselves and each other. The separation had strengthened their bond, proving that their connection went beyond their shared love for Zhu. The news came on a stormy Thursday evening, just days before Zhu's scheduled return. Emily's urgent call brought both families rushing to the shelter's conference room, where the Houston Center's director waited on video chat. We've noticed some concerning behaviors from Zhu in the past 24 hours, Dr. Phillips explained, her face grave. She's been refusing to leave the retirement facility after her training sessions, showing signs of distress we haven't seen before. The camera panned to show Zhu lying outside Luna's room, her posture tense and alert. At first we thought she was just trying to spend time with her mother, but then our veterinary team discovered something troubling. Luna's showing early signs of heart failure. Isabella's sharp intake of breath broke the stunned silence. Rachel wrapped her arms around her daughter while Sophie instinctively moved closer to offer support. Zhu sensed it before our medical team did, Dr. Phillips continued. She's been trying to tell us something was wrong. The way she positions herself near Luna, her changed behavior during training, it all makes sense now. Just like Rex, Sophie whispered, her voice trembling. He knew when things weren't right. He tried to warn us before his accident. The adults exchanged worried glances. The memory of losing Rex was still raw, and now the possibility of losing Luna threatened to reopen barely healed wounds. What are Luna's chances? Rachel asked, her veterinary training evident in her precise questions about symptoms and treatment options. Dr. Phillips's response was measured. With immediate intervention, we're cautiously optimistic. But the next 48 hours are crucial. Isabella, who had been silent until now, suddenly spoke with unexpected clarity. We need to go to Houston. When everyone turned to look at her, she continued, Luna helped me find my voice. Now she needs us to be hers. The logistics seemed impossible at first. Both families were struggling financially, and the short notice meant expensive travel arrangements. But then Thomas remembered something. My brother drives trucks between Austin and Houston, he offered. He's making a run tomorrow morning. It wouldn't be comfortable, but... We'll make it work, Catherine declared, already making mental calculations about what they could pawn to cover expenses. The Martinez's neighbor offered to watch their houses. Sophie's teacher promised to email assignments. Isabella's therapist rearranged appointments. The community that had once opposed their arrangement now rallied to support their emergency journey. They departed before dawn, cramped in the cab of Thomas's brother's truck. The girls huddled together in the back seat, sharing earbuds and quiet whispers of encouragement. The parents took turns driving the escort car behind the truck, coordinating with the training center via phone. Upon arrival, they found Zhu exactly where the video had shown her, outside Luna's room, maintaining her vigilant watch. The moment she saw both families together, her tail wagged briefly, but she refused to leave her post. She won't abandon her mother, Sophie realized, remembering how Rex had stayed with her after her accident despite his own injuries. Just like Rex stayed with me. Isabella approached Luna's room slowly, Zoo making space for her while maintaining her protective position. The elderly therapy dog lay on her bed, her breathing labored but her eyes bright with recognition. "Hi, Luna," Isabella whispered, kneeling beside her former companion. "We came as soon as we knew. Zoo told us you needed us." The next 48 hours became a testament to the strength of their unconventional family. The girls took turns reading to Luna from Isabella's journal, sharing stories of how Zoo had continued her legacy of healing. The parents coordinated with medical staff, their combined experience with Rex's care proving invaluable. Zoo moved between them all, somehow knowing exactly who needed support at any given moment. When Isabella's anxiety threatened to overwhelm her, Zoo would guide Sophie to her side. When Sophie's grief about Rex surfaced, Zoo would lead Isabella to share a calming technique. "Look at them," Rachel whispered to Catherine as they watched their daughters fall asleep on the floor of Luna's room, Zoo lying between them protectively. "They're not just supporting each other, they're stronger together." Despite the combined efforts of both families, Luna's condition worsened over the next few days. The veterinary team worked tirelessly, but each update brought more concerning news. Isabella refused to leave Luna's side, while Sophie maintained a constant vigil alongside her friend. Their roles now reversed as Sophie became the steady, speaking presence while Isabella retreated into silence. "Her heart's getting weaker," Dr. Phillips explained during one particularly difficult consultation. "The medications aren't working as well as we'd hoped." Rachel, drawing on her veterinary experience, understood the implications before the others, her face paling as she studied Luna's latest test results. The scene was hauntingly familiar to the Winters family, the sterile medical environment, the beeping monitors, the sense of helplessness. Thomas found himself reliving Rex's final days, watching history repeat itself through his daughter's eyes. But this time, Sophie wasn't the one needing comfort, she was providing it. "Isabella," Sophie whispered one evening as Luna's breathing became more labored. "Remember what you told me about Rex? How love doesn't end, it just changes shape. Maybe that's what's happening now." Zoo's behavior shifted subtly but significantly. She began spending more time pressed against Luna's side, her head resting near her mother's heart, as if lending her strength. During brief breaks from her vigil, she would gently tug at Isabella's sleeve, guiding her to the small courtyard for necessary moments of fresh air, then loyally returning to Luna's side. The training center staff watched in amazement as the two girls and Zoo created a continuous circle of care around Luna. When Isabella finally spoke again, it was to read Luna passages from her journal about how the elderly therapy dog had saved her after her father's death. "You showed me how to be brave," Isabella whispered to Luna, her voice breaking. "You taught me that silence doesn't mean being alone. Now I have Sophie and Zoo, but I still need you to stay." Catherine found Rachel crying in the hallway one night, the weight of professional knowledge becoming too heavy to bear. "I couldn't save Rex," Rachel sobbed. "And now Luna. I'm supposed to know how to fix this. I'm supposed to know how to help them." The girls overheard this conversation and something shifted in their understanding. The next morning they approached Dr. Phillips together, hand in hand, Zoo at their side. "We want to know everything," Sophie said firmly, echoing the strength she'd seen in Isabella during their therapy sessions. "No grown-up secrets. Luna and Rex taught us about being brave, even when it hurts." Isabella nodded, adding softly, "We need to know how to help like Zoo helps us." Dr. Phillips looked at their determined young faces and began explaining Luna's condition in terms they could understand. The parents watched with a mixture of pride and heartache as their daughters faced this new challenge together, their shared experience with loss making them stronger instead of breaking them. As Luna's condition continued to decline, the bond between the families deepened further. They took turns staying overnight, sharing memories of both Rex and Luna, creating a tapestry of love that encompassed past and present. Through it all, Zoo remained their anchor, embodying the best of both her mother's gentle wisdom and Rex's protective devotion. While the families focused on Luna's crisis in Houston, trouble was brewing back in Austin. Margaret Wilson had called an emergency community meeting, using the family's sudden departure as ammunition against the shelter's shared custody program. "Look at the chaos this arrangement has caused," she announced to the packed town hall. "Two families abandoning their responsibilities, children missing school, all because of an unstable situation we warned against from the beginning." The shelter's phone lines were flooded with concerned citizens. Even previously supportive neighbors began to question the wisdom of the arrangement. Emily found herself defending not just the program, but the family's character. Dr. Martinez abandoned her patients, one clinic board member noted during an emergency meeting. "The Winters girl hasn't been to school in days. This is exactly the kind of instability we feared." Local media picked up the story, running headlines like "Controversial Dog Sharing Experiment Leads to Crisis and Children's Education Sacrificed for Shelter's Radical Program." The apartment complex threatened to evict the Winters family permanently for breach of contract, while Rachel's clinic received formal complaints about her absence. David called Emily with more bad news. "The city council scheduled an emergency review of our adoption policies," he reported. "They're using this situation as evidence that our rehabilitation program is too experimental." The backlash spread to the children's schools. Sophie's teacher, under pressure from other parents, expressed concerns about her extended absence. Isabella's therapy center questioned the wisdom of allowing her to form such intense attachments to therapy dogs. "Perhaps this proves these families are too emotionally fragile for this kind of arrangement," Margaret suggested during a televised interview. "First the Rex tragedy, now this Luna situation. When do we say enough is enough?" Emily's attempts to explain the unique circumstances fell on deaf ears. The community seemed determined to see the worst in what had been a story of healing and hope. Even the training center in Houston began receiving calls questioning their involvement in the controversial program. The final blow came when the shelter's board of directors called for an immediate suspension of the shared custody program. "We can't risk our entire rehabilitation program for one experimental case," the chairman explained. "When these families return, they'll need to make a permanent decision about Zoo's placement." Messages of support turned to whispers of judgment. The same neighbors who had once praised the family's courage now crossed the street to avoid conversation. Parents at both girls' schools started a petition to protect their children from what they termed unstable influences. Back in Houston, unaware of the growing crisis, Sophie and Isabella continued their vigil at Luna's side, their strength and unity a stark contrast to the community's unraveling support. Zuyu remained focused on her dual mission, supporting her mother while continuing to bridge the emotional needs of both girls. Emily stood in her empty shelter office, surrounded by evidence of the program's success: photos, progress reports, testimonials from both families. On her desk, a notice from the city council demanded an immediate explanation for the shelter's reckless endangerment of community stability. "They don't understand," she whispered to Sarah's photo. "Sometimes the biggest risks look like mistakes to those who are too afraid to take them." The light on her phone blinked with dozens of messages demanding answers, while her email inbox filled with complaints and concerns. The carefully constructed support system they'd built was crumbling, and the families would be returning to a community that had turned against them. The true cost of their emergency trip to Houston began to surface during their second week at the training center. Catherine sat at the small hotel desk, staring at their dwindling bank account balance with growing desperation. The last-minute hotel charges, food expenses, and lost wages were quickly depleting their already strained resources. The apartment complex left another message, Thomas reported quietly, trying not to wake Sophie, who had finally fallen asleep on the hotel room's small couch. "They're not just threatening eviction anymore. They want last month's rent paid immediately, plus penalties for breaking the pet agreement." Across the hall, the Martinez family faced their own financial crisis. Rachel's clinic partners had voted to suspend her salary during her absence, citing breach of contract and patient abandonment. The emergency veterinarian covering her practice was charging premium rates, eating into the clinic's reserves. Isabella's therapy center is demanding advance payment for next month's sessions, Rachel confided to Catherine during their morning coffee run. "They're saying our insurance might not cover it anymore because of the irregular attendance patterns." The training center, though sympathetic, could only provide basic accommodation support. The mounting medical bills for Luna's care, even with professional courtesy discounts, were stretching both families to their breaking point. Emily called with worse news. The shelter's legal team advised that their innovative shared custody arrangement might have inadvertently violated state pet ownership regulations. Both families could face fines for improper pet registration and violation of municipal animal control ordinances. But one evening, Thomas found Catherine crying in the stairwell, clutching past due notices from Sophie's therapist. "We're losing everything again," she whispered. "Just like with Rex, we can't even afford to help Luna, let alone keep our promises about Zuyu." Rachel's situation grew equally dire. Her professional reputation, carefully built over years, was crumbling. Longtime clients were transferring their pets to other practices, concerned about her extended absence. The clinic's board scheduled an emergency meeting to discuss leadership restructuring. Isabella, perceptive despite her own grief, overheard her mother on the phone with the bank, discussing a second mortgage on their home. That night she slipped Sophie a note: "What if they make us choose between helping Luna and keeping Zuyu?" The girl's fear manifested in renewed anxiety symptoms. Sophie's nightmares about Rex returned, now intertwined with fears of losing Zuyu. Isabella's selective mutism expanded. She stopped speaking to everyone except Sophie and the dogs. During a particularly tense moment, when both families gathered to discuss their dwindling options, Zuyu demonstrated her extraordinary empathy. She retrieved Luna's old therapy vest from Isabella's bag, placing it carefully between the worried adults, a reminder of why they had taken this risk in the first place. "Look at what we've built," Thomas said quietly, picking up the vest. "Not just for the girls, but for all of us. There has to be a way." But the numbers told a harsh story. Between them, the families had exhausted their savings, maxed out credit cards, and risked their professional standings. The dream of maintaining their shared arrangement seemed to be slipping away, threatened not by lack of love or commitment, but by the cold realities of financial survival. The truth emerged on a quiet evening in Luna's room as both families maintained their vigil. Rachel had been reviewing Luna's medical charts when a memory struck her with such force that she dropped her clipboard, startling everyone present. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice trembling. "About Rex's last night." She turned to face the Winters family, her hands clasped tightly together, "something I've carried with me every day since." Catherine tensed while Thomas moved closer to Sophie protectively. They had never discussed the details of that night, the pain still too raw. "Luna was there," Rachel began softly. "She wasn't supposed to be. Therapy dogs weren't usually allowed in the emergency ward. But that night," she closed her eyes, remembering. "That night was different." Sophie leaned forward, her hand finding Isabella's instinctively. Zoo moved between them, offering her steady presence. Rex was struggling, and nothing we tried was working. Then Luna broke away from her handler. She somehow knew. Rachel's voice cracked. She went straight to Rex, lay down beside him, and something changed. His vitals stabilized temporarily. He held on long enough. Long enough for what Sophie whispered. "Long enough for you to say goodbye," Rachel finished, tears streaming down her face. Luna stayed with him until the end, and then she pulled out her phone, fingers shaking as she accessed an old video. "I've kept this, wondering if I should ever show you." The video, grainy in the emergency room's harsh lighting, showed Luna gently placing her therapy vest over Rex's still form, then sitting in silent vigil until attendants came to take him away. "She knew," Isabella said softly, speaking for the first time in hours. "Like Zuyu knows about Luna now." Catherine was crying openly. "Why didn't you tell us before?" "Because I failed," Rachel admitted. "As a vet, I couldn't save Rex. But Luna showed me that sometimes healing isn't about saving lives. Sometimes it's about how we help each other say goodbye." Thomas stood abruptly, walking to the window. "All this time," he said roughly, "we thought Rex died alone while we were stuck in traffic. But he had someone with him, someone who understood." Sophie moved to Rachel's side, studying her face intently. "Did Rex?" She swallowed hard. "Did he seem scared?" "No, sweetheart," Rachel pulled the girl close. "With Luna there, he was peaceful. He knew his job was done. He'd saved you. Luna helped him rest." Isabella retrieved her journal, opening to a page filled with drawings. "Look," she said, showing Sophie sketches of Luna working with other children. "Mom always said Luna had a gift for knowing what hearts needed. Now Zuyu has it too." The revelation seemed to shift something in the room's atmosphere. The weight of unspoken guilt and grief began to lift, replaced by a deeper understanding of the connections that had brought them together. Rachel turned to Catherine, who had yet to speak. "I'm so sorry I never told you, I thought knowing I couldn't save him, even with Luna's help." But Catherine surprised everyone by embracing Rachel fiercely. "You gave him peace," she whispered. "You both did. And now your daughter and your dogs are helping us heal." Margaret Wilson arrived at the Houston Training Center unannounced, her usual confident demeanor somewhat subdued. Emily, who had flown in to support both families through Luna's crisis, intercepted her in the lobby. "Before you say anything," Margaret began, raising a hand to stop Emily's defensive response, "I need you to show me everything. I need to understand what I've been fighting against." Emily led her through the facility, explaining how Zoo had sensed Luna's condition before the medical team, how the girls had supported each other through the crisis. They paused outside Luna's room, where Sophie was teaching Isabella breathing exercises while Zuyu maintained her protective vigil. "These are the same children?" Margaret asked incredulously. "The silent girl who wouldn't leave her mother's side. The angry one who couldn't talk about her dog without crying." Through the window they watched as Isabella gently adjusted Luna's blanket while Sophie read aloud from their shared journal. Zoo moved between them with practiced grace, offering comfort to each in turn. "I received this yesterday," Margaret said quietly, pulling out a letter. It was from her grandson's therapist describing his severe anxiety after losing his mother. "They're recommending animal therapy. When I saw that, I had to come see for myself." Just then, Thomas emerged from the room, exhaustion evident on his face. Recognizing Margaret, he stiffened, but she spoke first. "Mr. Winters, I owe you and your family an apology," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I was so focused on rules and regulations I couldn't see the healing happening right in front of us." Inside the room, Isabella had begun to sing softly to Luna, something she hadn't done since losing her father. Sophie joined in, their voices blending in a gentle harmony that brought tears to the observer's eyes. The community's response, Margaret shook her head. "I started it. All those fears about instability and risk, I was wrong. This isn't chaos, it's courage." Rachel appeared with Luna's medical charts, startled to see Margaret. But before anyone could speak, Zoo approached the window, looking directly at Margaret with that same knowing gaze that had first caught Emily's attention. "She reminds me of someone," Margaret admitted softly. "We had a therapy dog when my daughter was in hospice. The way she knew exactly what each person needed. I'd forgotten that feeling until now." Emily watched as understanding transformed Margaret's features. "This isn't just about sharing a dog, is it?" she asked. "It's about creating something new, something bigger than our fears." "It's about family," Thomas said quietly. "Not the kind you're born into, but the kind you build together through love and loss and everything in between." Margaret straightened her shoulders, decision made. "The community meeting next week, I'd like to speak. Not against the program this time, but for it. These children, these families, people need to see what's really happening here." She turned to Emily, her voice firm. "I'll talk to the city council, the shelter board, everyone who opposed this. We weren't just wrong, we were standing in the way of something miraculous." Through the window, they watched as both girls curled up next to Luna, Zoo standing guard over all of them. The scene painted a picture more powerful than any argument: two families united in love, two children healing each other, and the extraordinary dogs who had brought them together. The turning point in Luna's condition came unexpectedly during one of the girls' nightly reading sessions. Sophie was sharing stories about Rex while Isabella held Luna's paw, with Zoo maintaining her now familiar position between them all. "Her heart rhythm stabilizing," Dr. Phillips announced during the morning rounds, studying the monitors with puzzled excitement. "The medication's finally taking effect, but there's something else happening here." Rachel, reviewing the charts with her professional eye, noticed the correlation. Luna's vital signs showed marked improvement during the times both families were together in her room, particularly when the girls were reading or singing to her. "It's like she's drawing strength from all of us," Catherine observed, watching Luna lift her head for the first time in days to nuzzle Isabella's hand, just like Zuyu does. The improvements continued steadily. Luna began responding to physical therapy, her eyes tracking movement across the room. Zoo's behavior shifted too. Instead of maintaining her constant vigilant watch, she started encouraging Luna to move, bringing her toys and gently coaxing her to engage. "Look at this," Dr. Phillips showed them the comparison readings. "Her heart function is improving beyond our expectations." It's as if she paused, searching for scientific words to explain something that defied medical logic. It's as if she's responding to the collective energy in the room. Isabella started reading her journal entries about Luna to her every morning, while Sophie shared stories about Rex's bravery. The elderly therapy dogs seemed to gain strength from their voices, their laughter, their united presence. One memorable afternoon, Luna surprised everyone by standing up and walking slowly to where the girls sat doing homework. Zooey immediately positioned herself as support on one side, while both Sophie and Isabella steadied her on the other. "She's teaching Zoo," Isabella whispered, watching the interaction between mother and daughter, "showing her how to help us heal, just like she always did." The medical staff documented Luna's recovery, noting the unusual speed and extent of her improvement. What they couldn't quantify was the power of the love surrounding her, two families united in purpose, two girls sharing strength and two remarkable dogs bridging past and present. "There's something profound happening here," Dr. Phillips admitted to Emily. "Something that goes beyond medical science. These families, together with Zuu and Luna, they've created their own kind of healing environment." The breakthrough moment came when Luna, still weak but determined, retrieved her old therapy vest that Isabella had brought. She placed it carefully at Zoo's feet, then looked between both girls with clear intention. "She's passing the torch," Rachel realized, tears in her eyes, showing us that her work continues through Zoo, through the girls, through all of us. That evening, as both families gathered in Luna's room for their now traditional shared dinner, the elderly therapy dog did something remarkable. She walked slowly to each person, in turn offering a gentle nuzzle to Rachel, a paw tap to Thomas, a soft whine for Catherine, and finally settling between Sophie and Isabella, with Zuu completing their circle. "The tests confirm it," Dr. Phillips announced the next morning. "Her heart function has stabilized. She's going to need ongoing care," but she smiled at the assembled families. "Luna's strong enough to go home." The word home hung in the air, its meaning transformed by their shared experience. Home was no longer just a place, it was this connection they'd built, this love that had helped heal not just Luna, but all of them. Back in Austin, Emily stood before the city council, her presentation backed by an unexpected array of supporters. Margaret Wilson sat in the front row alongside both families, while Zoo and a recovering Luna demonstrated their extraordinary bond for all to see. "What began as an experimental arrangement has become a model for innovative animal welfare," Emily explained, displaying charts and testimonials. "The Houston Training Center is already implementing similar programs based on our experience." The council chamber was packed with community members, many of whom had originally opposed the program. They watched in amazement as Sophie and Isabella presented their shared documentation of Zoo's impact on their lives. "Before Zuu," Sophie spoke clearly into the microphone, "I couldn't talk about losing Rex without crying. Now I help other kids understand that love doesn't end when you say goodbye." Isabella, standing tall despite her anxiety, added, "And I learned that being quiet doesn't mean being alone. Sometimes family comes in ways you don't expect." Dr. Phillips from Houston presented the medical data showing how shared custody arrangements could benefit both animals and families. What we witnessed with Luna's recovery wasn't just emotional support, it was a new model of community healing. Margaret stepped forward to address her former allies. "I was wrong," she declared. "We all were. In trying to protect our community from perceived risks, we nearly prevented something miraculous from taking root." The shelter's board of directors listened intently as Emily outlined her proposed policy changes. The new framework would include careful screening for compatible families, structured support systems for shared arrangements, regular evaluations and adjustments, community involvement in the healing process, professional oversight for therapy dog partnerships. "We're not just changing adoption policies," Emily explained, "we're reimagining how animals can help heal communities." Rachel and Catherine shared their experience, describing how their families had grown stronger together. Thomas spoke about the financial benefits of shared responsibility, while the girls demonstrated how they'd learned to support each other through difficult times. The council members were particularly moved by video footage from Luna's recovery, showing how the combined strength of both families had contributed to her healing. This isn't just about sharing custody of a dog, Emily concluded. It's about creating networks of support, about understanding that healing happens best in community. The vote was unanimous. Not only would the shelter's shared custody program continue, but it would receive additional funding to expand and serve as a model for other communities. With one condition, the council chair added, smiling, that these two families continue to serve as ambassadors for the program. Their story needs to be shared. As the chamber erupted in applause, Emily touched Sarah's locket, thinking of how one crisis had led to transformation. She watched Sophie and Isabella hugging their parents, Zoo and Luna creating a perfect circle of connection around them all. The shelter would never be the same. What had started as a desperate solution to an impossible situation had grown into something revolutionary, a new understanding of how families, animals, and communities could heal together. The transformation of Austin's Oak Haven neighborhood happened gradually, then all at once. It began with small gestures, neighbors offering rides to the Winters family for their visits with Zoo, local businesses donating supplies for the shelter's new shared custody program, community members volunteering to help coordinate exchanges. Margaret Wilson led the change, turning her considerable organizational skills toward supporting rather than opposing the program. She transformed the neighborhood association's monthly meetings into forums for sharing success stories and addressing challenges constructively. "Remember when we thought this would destroy our community?" she asked during one gathering as Sophie and Isabella demonstrated Zoo's therapy techniques to a group of interested families. "Instead, it's brought us together in ways we never imagined." The Martinez Clinic became a hub for the expanding program. Rachel established regular workshops where families could learn about animal therapy and explore the possibility of shared arrangements. The waiting room, once sterile and quiet, now buzzed with conversation as families shared experiences and supported each other. Thomas's technical skills found new purpose as he developed an app to help families coordinate care schedules and share updates. The Winters apartment complex, which had once threatened eviction, now proudly advertised itself as pet-sharing friendly with dedicated spaces for family exchanges. Local schools began incorporating lessons from the program. Sophie and Isabella were invited to speak to younger students about empathy, loss, and healing. Zoo's gentle presence in these sessions helped anxious children find their voice, just as Luna had once done. "Watch this," Sophie would tell the children, demonstrating how Zoo could sense when someone needed comfort. Isabella would then explain how sharing their special dog had taught them both to be stronger. The shelter's visitor numbers soared as people came to learn about the program. Emily found herself mentoring other shelters across the state, sharing the protocols and lessons they'd developed. The waiting list for shared custody arrangements grew, but so did the community's commitment to making it work. Catherine's house cleaning business thrived as former critics became clients, impressed by her resilience and determination. Her customers often requested updates about Zoo and the program, leading to unexpected connections and support. Even the local media, which had once sensationalized the arrangement, began featuring positive stories about community transformation. They documented holiday celebrations where multiple families gathered with their shared pets, creating new traditions of inclusive healing. The neighborhood's annual festival took on new meaning, with a special section dedicated to animal therapy and shared custody success stories. Luna, now recovered enough to make occasional appearances, became a symbol of hope and resilience, while Zoo demonstrated the ongoing power of connecting hearts across households. "It's not just about the dogs anymore," Rachel observed during one festival, watching children from throughout the community playing together while their parents exchanged stories and support. "It's about remembering we're all connected." The transformation reached beyond Oak Haven. Other neighborhoods began requesting information about starting their own programs. The city council received inquiries from municipalities across the country, all interested in replicating what they called the Austin model. A number of communities supported pet sharing. 1 year after the program's official approval, the neighborhood gathered for a special celebration. Families who had once been strangers now shared meals and memories. Children who had been isolated by trauma or anxiety played freely, supported by a network of understanding adults and therapy dogs. Margaret stood beside Emily, watching Sophie and Isabella lead a group of younger children in a game they'd invented, with Zoo orchestrating the fun. "We didn't just save a program," Margaret mused. "We found a better way to be neighbors, to be community." The Austin Animal Shelter's annual celebration took on special significance that autumn day. The courtyard, once a simple meeting space, had been transformed into a festival of healing and hope. Photographs lined the walls, Rex's brave sacrifice, Luna's recovery, Zoo's journey, telling the story of how one crisis had sparked a revolution in community care. Sophie and Isabella, now confident 13-year-olds, stood at a podium together, addressing the gathered crowd. Their transformation was remarkable. Sophie spoke with gentle wisdom about loss and healing, while Isabella's voice carried clearly across the courtyard as she explained their shared journey. "A year ago," Sophie began, her hand resting on Zoo's head, "we thought sharing meant having less. We were so wrong." Isabella continued, "We discovered that love multiplies when you share it. Like ripples in a pond, it just keeps growing." The evidence of those ripples surrounded them. 20 other families had successfully joined the shared custody program, their stories adding new chapters to what had begun with one German Shepherd and 2 broken families. Luna, now living permanently at the Martinez home but regularly visited by all, watched the proceedings with gentle dignity from her cushioned bed. Thomas and Rachel had collaborated to create a comprehensive guide for other communities interested in starting similar programs. Catherine's cleaning business had evolved into a support service for families in the program, helping coordinate exchanges and maintaining pet-friendly spaces. The Winters had moved into a new home, smaller than their original but filled with more love than ever. The Martinez Clinic had become a model for innovative veterinary practices, integrating community support with animal care. Emily, watching it all from the shelter's entrance, held Sarah's locket as she often did in moments of significance. "You were right, little sister," she whispered. "The biggest risks do lead to the greatest healing." The celebration included a special ceremony where new families joined the program. Each received a symbolic key representing their commitment to unlocking new ways of healing together. Zoo, ever the gentle teacher, demonstrated with each new therapy dog how to create bridges between hearts and homes. Margaret Wilson, now the program's most vocal advocate, presented awards to families who had shown exceptional commitment to community healing. "We're not just changing how we care for animals," she declared. "We're changing how we care for each other." The most touching moment came when Sophie and Isabella unveiled their joint project, a memorial wall honoring Rex, celebrating Luna's recovery and documenting Zoo's ongoing journey. The inscription read, "Love doesn't divide, it multiplies. In memory of those who taught us to be brave, and in celebration of those who help us keep growing." As evening fell, both families gathered around a table laden with food brought by community members. Zoo moved between them all with practiced ease, while Luna watched contentedly from her special place of honor. The girls sat together, sharing stories with newer program participants, their once broken hearts now strong enough to help heal others. "Look at what you started," Catherine said to Emily, gesturing at the thriving celebration around them. "All because you were willing to take a chance on an impossible situation." Emily smiled, watching Zoo guide a nervous new therapy dog through meeting multiple families. "No," she replied. "All because 2 families were brave enough to believe that love could grow even in the midst of loss." As stars appeared above the shelter's courtyard, the gathering continued to celebrate not just the program's success, but the transformation of an entire community. In the gentle evening light, surrounded by the family they had built together, Sophie and Isabella's words rang true: "Love, when shared, truly does multiply." Thank you for watching Bonds Beyond Boundaries. If this story of love, healing, and community touched your heart, please take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your own experiences with pet adoption, family bonds, or community healing. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more touching stories that celebrate the extraordinary connections between humans and animals. Hit the like button if you believe in the power of shared love and second chances. Help us spread this message of hope by sharing this video with your friends and family. Every share helps us reach more people who might need to hear that healing is possible, and that love truly multiplies when shared. Your support enables us to continue bringing these meaningful stories to light. Together we can build more compassionate communities, one story at a time.